Hello, everyone, and welcome to Lesson 5-2, Changes in Society. Today we're going to be looking at the 1920s and how American society is not returning to normalcy. Young Americans in the 1920s did not want to live the life of their parents. They did not look back at the 1880s and 1890s and think, that sounds like a great idea. We should do that. No. They wanted to do their own thing, invent their own lives, go their own way. Imagine that. The kids of the 20s. So they rebelled. They did crazy things like wearing funny clothes and listening to different sorts of music. They learned new dances, and oh my gosh, these rebels. They went to college. Their parents didn't do it, so they were like, I'm going to do something different. I am going to get an education. The 1920s, most familiar icon of the 1920s is the flapper. This is an image right here of a flapper. Flappers were young women who wanted to try new things, to break the mold, go out in society and say, hey, we've got the right to vote now. We're full equal citizens now. Let's go out and do our thing. We're not going to be dictated to by old social norms. So they go out and they drive cars. Women hadn't been driving before the 1920s. They play sports. We start to see women's sports appear. And they, of course, attend college because what better way to rebel against society than to get an education? Best way to rebel. I hope you guys all become rebels. New opportunities for college education and college-educated women presented all kinds of new experiences that women could go out and have. Educated women start taking jobs as teachers, librarians, social workers, getting paid more and more money, able to exist in a society. They don't need men anymore. Pah! The ultimate goal, however, was a law written at the highest levels that stated clearly that women could not be discriminated against based upon their gender in any aspect of society. That was put together as an equal rights amendment to guarantee that women could not be paid less or denied certain jobs or treated as less than men in any way. However, Congress does reject that. We try again and again throughout the decades to get an equal rights amendment, but there is no such thing today. There is no equal rights amendment. Women, you are not guaranteed this on a federal level. Sorry. We should fix that. Go fix that. Be a rebel. All right, social changes. Despite the promise of a return to normalcy, the 1920s were not normal by any stretch of the imagination. They had a lot of social changes that America needed to adjust to. And not all of these were seen as positive. In fact, many of them were seen as negative, including prohibition. In 1920, we had the 18th Amendment. It outlaws the sale of alcohol in America. It's illegal. It was actually 1918. I've got that date wrong. Anyway, alcohol becomes illegal in the United States of America. Now, Americans decide pretty quickly that they don't like this. They liked having a drink. And, well, it's available. We just have to buy it illegally now. We can't get it legally, so we'll buy it illegally. So all this money that was going to private business owners and bars and alcohol was taxed and regulated and all that stuff. Nope. Now instead that money is going to go to criminals who can get them their alcohol illegally. And so, although it was intended to reduce crime, the law actually increases organized crime. Mob bosses, such as Al Capone in Chicago, become extremely wealthy because they're the ones who figured out a way to get alcohol to people who wanted to have a drink. And those crime organizations grew as a result of prohibition. Discrimination. The Great Migration of World War I, this idea of African Americans coming up from the South to work in northern factories and produce for the war and help America win the war by winning the war on the home front. Well, this led to a lot of African Americans moving into northern cities where there was tension between whites and blacks. And discrimination in northern cities actually increased in the 1920s. All those Northerners looked at the South and said, the South is such backward society, it got all this discrimination, and then all of a sudden, the North became more and more discriminatory as well. The NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, tried to protect the rights of African Americans throughout this period, but they failed to gain a lot of traction. They're not very successful during the 1920s, certainly not as successful as they will be in the 1950s, which we'll study in a little while. Fundamentalism. Some within America felt threatened by other changes to American society, specifically knowledge and science. There was this big pushback against science in America in the 1920s, kind of as there is a little bit of a pushback in today's world, too. Those who have felt particularly threatened were fundamental Christians. And one of the things that they really did not like was the theory of evolution. This is the idea that as our environments change, those that live in the environments adapt to those changes. And so we are always evolving and becoming a little different to meet the needs of our society. The theory of evolution says that this has been happening for millions of years, not billions of years, and hundreds of millions of years anyway. And society and all organisms on Earth are a product of this evolution, and that people themselves have evolved out of an ape-like species over these millions and millions of years. Fundamentalists said, no, that's not true. The Earth is only 6,000 years old, and we were created from Adam and Eve, God's own image. It says so in the Bible. The Bible is true, and therefore science is wrong. And there was this big tension between the two at the time. We also had, I mentioned racism before, and here we go again, a rise in the Ku Klux Klan. During this time of division, during this time of fear and hatred, membership in the Ku Klux Klan, a divided, fearful, and hating organization, increased sharply. In 1924, the peak of the Ku Klux Klan, there were over 5 million members. 5 million members! 5 million members in this KKK. It's disgusting to say that at one point, about 5% of the citizens of the United States of America were members of the KKK. But it was true. This is our history. This is something that we have to cope with all the time, is that we are a racist society. And in 1924, 1 in 20 citizens of the United States were a member of this violent racist organization. All right, so in the 1920s, not all those changes were positive. That return to normalcy was certainly not everything that Harding had promised it would be. We see some good things, women's rights, etc. And we see some less good things, such as social tension, crime, violence, racism, etc. All right, that is all for today. I hope you learned something today, and I will see you next time. Farewell.